Good evening. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Special meeting for Thursday, July 3rd, 2024 at 5:30 PM at Shockley Administration Building. Call to order. And now roll call to members.
Mrs. Crumley, Mrs. Cameron,
Present.
Mr. Orozco,
Present.
absent are Mr. Kroll and Mrs. Baez. We do have a quorum.
Okay, pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among United States.
Any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I do request that we remove action item A, so 6A on the agenda. This was not needed as we just started a new fiscal year. And that will be the only change.
Okay,
I'll move that we adopt the agenda with the exception of consideration and approval of the budget adjustment request
okay.
to be removed.
I'll second.
Motion and a second.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Okay.
With that, on to reports and policy updates.
Mr. Orozco, members of the board. What I wanted to do was discuss a little bit of how we're gonna push this out. I did discuss it last time. I did leave it on the agenda just in case our other members joined us. However, we will roll out the new policies throughout the first few weeks of the school year to admin, staff, and the public. Tonight, we will ask for the consideration to approve and adopt the policy survey services with the exception of G, I, and J. And we'll bring those three sections back to you on July 18th, which is before the students come back for the new school year. I do have Miss Doyle here who would like to discuss a couple of items. Go ahead, Miss Doyle. She briefed me, but she's more elegant in her speaking.
Mr. President, members of the board, thank you, Travis. So there are actually two items that I wanted to bring before you. The first one we did discuss before as it relates to donations and at what level you guys wanted to be made aware of the donations. As it stands now, anything up to $5,000 or $49.99.99 actually. The superintendent approves and no further action is taken. Anything more than $5,000 comes before the board and you guys approve it. The way that the policy service policy is written is that you would need to see everything. And I don't know that that's the direction you would like to go. I just need some clarification so that I can make sure that I do what it is that you guys are requesting.
I don't see a need in changing it. I mean, you can always brief us or a monthly brief. I would think, I mean, I don't think we necessarily need to see every single thing because that just adds more to the meetings.
I don't think, I'm sorry.
That's my take on it. I don't know what you guys feel.
I agree. If we, after have gone through it, that we're just given a papers, just to give us enough, so we know what's going on. And not a presentation or unless someone needs to, but just to give us, let us see what's happening, so we're not left out.
So Mr. Turner, if you can include with the superintendent. And then
Good with that, Ash?
What policy number is it? Because if we're gonna adopt policies, we want to make sure we don't accidentally adopt it if we don't want
it's
it.
630 in the old policy. I'm not sure what it is in the new one.
So basically the question is, do we just roll over 630 into the new policy service? And replace what is currently there?
But I don't know that I want to roll the entire thing over. There is just a section that discusses what it is that would need to be approved by the board.
I think if we knew which policy it is that talks about donations, like the number, then we could either revise it right now or pull it and do it on July 18th.
So while you're looking for that, I can speak to the next one also. And we'll probably need that number too, I don't know the new one. As it stands, so the board should be approving anything over 60,000. My question to you is, if we have approved it for an RFP. And it's already come before you for approval and we approve it for 4 years. Do you still need to see that every single year if it's over 60,000? And let me give you an example. It's just kind of some reference. So right now, at the beginning of the year, we get all these really big POs. We do have some for, say, student nutrition for Cisco. It's over $1 million. However, was it last year? I believe it was last year. There was an RFP that was approved. So you have already approved that cost for 4 years. So do you still need to see it? Or if it's gone to RFP, are you guys okay with us just paying it?
To me, it only makes sense if it's approved for 4 years. Why do we need to see it every year?
I think it's a
That's-
procedural question, which is more geared towards the superintendent giving guidance on procedure.
Okay,
I think we implement an umbrella policy about it. I don't know what number it is.
I don't know.
Either.
2450, I'm looking right at it.
What is it?
2450,
And this one's for the
For the-
donations one or?
no.
No,
for the
this is for the
RFP.
procurement.
Okay, so 2450. I think if 2450, I don't have it in front of me. If 2450 is written broadly enough, then I think superintendent can direct procedure.
I don't think it is written
It's not.
broadly enough.
no, it's very specific. Let me go back to it.
The other
This is
thing
an
I,
opportunity for us to write it broadly,
yeah,
which I'm fine in doing. I just wanna.
I do think though that if, even though we don't approve it or anything, but for us to be given what we are buying in the district.
So as I understand it, you do get the checks in your board packet, and so that would be,
Right.
yes.
We're not thinking about moving that
No,
out.
no,
Okay,
no, that would continue to happen.
okay, thank you.
Travis, what section is it?
D,
D.
Steve, what do you know?
when.
460, 450.
60? 50? 50. Say that
So
again,
it says that,
2450.
subsequent contract award amendments which exceed 10% of the original contract award shall be submitted to the board for review and approval. And there's times I know there's certain contracts that we see an increase throughout.
And I do think we should leave that.
Okay,
That I would like to leave, because I think, especially as it relates to construction, if there's a huge change order, I think you guys should be made
See,
aware of that.
Which part of the policy are you wanting to change?
do you wanna see? that?
Yeah, let me see it.
It's D 2450.
Yes.
It's not really that I'm wanting to change it, I just would like to know, let's see.
Cause I read it to kind of broadly say superintendent designates a purchasing agent. That person manages essential functions and carries out administrative procedures consistent with law. And I think procedures are things that are implemented by the superintendent.
I thought that it talked about $60,000 specifically.
All I see is a 10% right now.
Did I dream that or get it mixed up with something else?
Unless it's a different policy number, I don't know.
D 2450, is that what you?
It could be that if we implement it and then you decide it's not workable, bring it back.
You may have just confused the current with
Maybe
that
I
one.
did. Okay, so given that then. What is it? So anything that's over $60,000, that's an RFP, you guys need to approve. What about if it is a CES, like a cooperative contract or cooperative, over 60,000? Do you want to see that?
I mean, CES is following everything that's required by law, just they're taking a lot of the steps out.
That is,
And they're saving us a few of those steps. Are you familiar, you're familiar with CES?
Mhm.
So the long and the short is basically they're an approved and authorized list of companies that can do business with state entities. And they've already taken some of the steps to be able to make a purchase a little more seamless, I guess would be.
so they've already done the procurement piece.
Oh, okay.
And it's not just CES, it would be any cooperative that we could use within the state of New Mexico. CES is one that we do use regularly, but just so, you know, to be clear,
I
this would be
think
true with all.
I think that does still fall under the purview of superintendent, right? So
Okay.
it says that the purchasing agent for the district manages a central purchasing function
Mhm.
pursuant to law, promulgate district administrative procedures consistent with law and regulations. So I think as long as you're doing whatever you need to do procedurally under the law, then you're fine.
Okay, so the only thing then is, as I hear what you guys are saying, that needs to be approved by the board for an expense would be an RFP. If we went to RFP, we evaluated and we would need to then come before the board. That's historically how it's been done. But I'm not sure that, given what you're saying, Ms. Crumley, that you would even want to see those.
I wonder if that's a question that's more for like the school's attorney.
Yeah, we can definitely bounce it off. I don't think,
Yeah.
I don't think it would hurt.
And am I hearing that we wouldn't even see them?
Well, that's what I'm.
That's what I think we should maybe, information given to us, but it doesn't mean we have to approve it.
So that would be also included in the texts that were written? Or would you want to see it before we paid for it?
I don't,
I think it's implementing policy, and then if there's questions about interpreting policy and what procedure should be implemented, then that's more of a school attorney question
yeah,
Okay,
than us, you know?
okay,
no, I was just saying at some point though, just to,
You want to see the expenditures over
yeah,
sixty
just so
thousand,
we're more,
just so we know.
so we know.
okay.
I have complete faith that, but I think some way the board be provided what it is we are spending, because you never know, someone's gonna ask you, why did they get this or something? And then you say, well, I didn't know that. And that's embarrassing to say, I don't know that.
I do believe that RFPs have to be approved by the board.
Yes.
The initial.
So that would need to be approved, but if it's a cooperative,
CES type.
it wouldn't necessarily need to be. And then to Ms. Cameron's question, you would want to know before we pay for it, or the
No, not,
checks that are provided in the packet are sufficient?
no, because we're giving, if we give this authority, I don't think we need to see it beforehand. I just think it would be to be provided to us in the packet as for us just to know and see, and sometimes we can learn too more about what we're doing just by having it. Seeing, or people will ask you, why don't you do so and so, and you've just spent 25,000 and we don't know,
How are we currently doing that with?
Currently, I think we're kind of going back to what we would normally do, although right now, if it is over 60, even if it's with cooperative, you guys would approve?
Yeah. I kind of lean that way, just because it's taxpayer money. At least be presented beforehand, before we go spend it, just so we're aware, just so if we have questions, just so before we make a big purchase, I think that may be,
Yeah.
I kind of lean that way.
We could put it on the consent agenda so that you guys could at least see it and not necessarily have it as an action item.
That might be a good idea to start off with.
One of the most current purchases that I can think of that you all approved was playground equipment. And that was over the 60,000. So we presented it to you all and then you approved it. But it is a way for you to know what big projects we have going around.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what how do we can agree, just so that we're aware, and someone on the, at McDonald's asked you the question,
What's your thoughts, Ashley?
I think I just go back to, I think the safe option is checking in with the attorney to see what it is that the board under the law is supposed to discuss and approve
Mhm.
versus just
What
an
to see?
FYI.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Okay, I have that written down, and we can provide that update to you, on July 18th.
Yeah, and I think I really agree with that, because we don't want to find ourselves in you're in a position, or the board or whomever,
Okay.
So I like contacting the lawyer. There might be another way that we can do all that without having to bring, everything to us.
And as far as the 10% of the projects, assuming, I do not believe that that is part of what the board is required to approve. And if it is not, then would you want that on the consent agenda or as an action? And I would think that that would primarily be construction.
I think that I like the language of subsequent contract award amendments that exceed 10% of the original award should be submitted to the board for review and approval, because I think if we've already approved a contract and then it ends up going over by 10%, I think we should consider it and approve
I
that
agree.
first.
I think that should come to the board.
Yeah.
As an action.
I think that would work.
Well, I think it's a protection for everyone.
And so some of those contracts are locked in for the year price wise, but yeah, some of them aren't. And yeah,
And it
the
does
ability
give
to
a
go.
carve out. There's a carve out for construction contracts as far as if the contract has a provision for contingencies in it, then we may not necessarily need to pre-approve those. But everything else, I think. that makes sense.
I think I have my marching orders.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, so we covered everything under policy updates. We did. Okay, so we're on to action items. Action item B, consideration and approval to transition to New Mexico School Boards Association Policy Service and establish NMSBA Policy Service. Policies as current board policies to replace prior board policies. Mr. Taylor.
Mr. President, members of the board, as we have been discussing for several months, the transition to the NMSBA Policy Service. We've gone through presentations with Dan Castile from the New Mexico School Boards Association. And I'm here to answer any questions or discuss any areas of concern that you all have.
Doing this, if we want to add another policy, will we have
Yes.
You can always
Yes.
expand on any of the
Yeah,
policies.
I thought so, but I wanted to ask and make sure.
Yes, so the wonderful thing about the policy service is they have an attorney, right? Currently it's Dan Castile, before it was John Kennedy. And they stay on top of case law legislation and any changes that may occur, then they give us advisories, letting us know that a new law is contradicting with policy and that we may need to consider revising.
So it's kind of a protection in a way.
It is, and then we can also then add what we need to for our own district. It's not one set of policies. It's very customizable.
Yeah, but it gives you the framework for
Yes.
everything.
I do have 4 proposed changes for section B. I emailed them to you all probably a few months ago. I don't know if you received them. But they are, first is B 1250, which is the policy for the school board attorney. The changes that I'm asking to consider is just that an inclusion of a sentence that no district employee can consult the board's legal counsel without the express permission of the superintendent. Just so that relationship is clear. And also that when there are copies of written requests for opinions, whether it's requested by the superintendent or the board president, that those be furnished to all board members. And also that not only can the superintendent provide information to the board about an attorney response, but also that the president can do that too, because the president can also talk to the school board attorney. And so I think that the board president should also be able to report to the rest of us. And then for B 1800, which is quorum, I'm suggesting that we implement language for unforeseen circumstances that might prevent a board member from physically being here. So that we have the opportunity to participate remotely, but only if we've notified the board president and the superintendent in advance, unless there's an emergency. I think that the board member attending remotely should be able to have clear audio and video, so that the public can clearly hear and see that person. And also that us as board members should not be using remote participation solely for convenience or to avoid attending a meeting in person. The next proposed change I have is for B 3050, which deals with communication between the board and employees. I want to strike the language about the board not being able to consider anonymous communication. I think we should have the ability to consider anonymous grievances made by employees. And I also think that we should strike the language that says that it's considered insubordination when an employee circumvents proper chain of command. It doesn't sit well with me that employees can be considered insubordinate if they have a genuine concern that maybe they are afraid to go through their chain of command for some reason. I think that the board should encourage communication rather than shut it down. And so those are my changes for that one. And then similarly for B 3100, which is communications between the board and the community. I'd like to revise that so that it's clear that we encourage communication at the administrative level, but also that we will consider anonymous submission if there's sufficient information provided. But to make it clear that the superintendent is the primary channel, obviously, for everything. So I didn't read them word for word, my changes, but I did send them to you all. So
Mr. President, members of the board, Ms. Crumley did point out a very good thing that I forgot to mention was before you, we do have all the proposed changes. And all four that Ms. Crumley brought up have been reflected on the changes, so they would be part of what you would potentially be approving tonight should a motion be made.
Well, and one of the things when I went through them, I found a lot of embarrassing ways it's written for a school board. Where some words are not written.
Yes, definitely a rough draft.
No, this is in our current policy. That I just feel that we really need to go through this policy and again, and make sure, unless I have the wrong policy book, which I don't think I did, unless you gave me, then, but I just think it's very important that being a school policy manual and having not correct proper grammar or punctuation or whatever. I think we want to make sure that we look at that. I guess
Well,
it's,
and I think that with that, you're talking about the old policies, right?
well, that's what I'm kind of confused. Are we talking about their policy?
So
our
the old
policy?
policies we're gonna be rolling over to these new policies, so it should address a lot of those issues that you have, I believe. No
Well,
concerns
it's-
about the language and stuff.
Uh, I guess, cause I don't wanna be again,
The new
Oh.
policies will be revised and corrected with grammar and any spelling mistakes.
well, that's just, I think it's embarrassing for us to even have that, so.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, as you can see, I did kind of go through it a little bit. I didn't. So. So we'll have a chance to look through it before we approve it.
Yes.
Well, I think we were talking about approving it now, right?
Right.
So I think, are we going to be presented with like the proposed changes for section D, for example? And C and E?
You
on
mean
this-
what it
on the
would look,
spreadsheet?
so those would be the changes that we're going to make? Are you asking if we would present the entire policy to you?
I think that I wouldn't be comfortable making the specific changes unless I saw what they were,
Yeah,
honestly.
Okay,
I feel the same way. That's, when I went through this.
So you want to see a draft of the entire policy
Mhm.
with the changes
Not the entire policy.
or the
I'm
entire list
proposing
of
the
policies?
ones that they want to change, that the district wants to change. I'd like to see that first before we approve
Approve
it.
it. Okay. So then we'll just, do we need a motion to table that then?
yes.
I'll move to table. The approval until our next meeting, or till the
Until the revise.
revised.
Okay, that's for B.
I would move to adopt, I would move to approve the transition to New Mexico School Boards Association Policy Service and establish policies as the current board policies to replace the prior policies, except for, D, C, G, I, and J. I think E is fine, A is fine, B is fine with the exception of, I would modify my motion to include revising the four that I just presented. So A, B with presented changes. E, F, H. I don't know how many letters is in this policy.
You're missing K.
Well, I got to H, I haven't gotten there. Does it only go to K?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So there's that motion with those,
I have a question, if I can ask it. Are you doing under the new policy revision or the current policy revision?
New.
I guess I want to make sure I understand.
So before we move forward with Ms. Crumley's motion, we either need action on Mrs. Cameron's or she can withdraw her motion to table.
Oh, I don't think I have the answer, though. I'm trying to be clear. Is this the ones that are coming out from the state, from the policy?
Yes.
the ones we're going to, those are the.
So
policies we're going to.
these are immaterial anymore,
yeah.
is what, I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that, we're,
Yeah,
Okay.
those don't really matter anymore.
no, and I hope we never have one that looks like this again. Okay. All right, I'm finished.
So, so you need to make a decision on your table and you can either withdraw the motion that you have to table it, or we need a vote on that. Because Mrs. Crumley has presented approval with the exception of ones that she noted.
You can't vote on a motion without a second though, right?
No.
Correct. So if we sit here in silence for a little bit, her motion to table would die, or she can withdraw and we can move to your motion.
Oh, you're talking about mine?
Yes,
Okay, I'll withdraw.
Okay.
I just,
So do we have a second? Go ahead.
and then, so do we have a second for the motion that Mrs. Crumley presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second.
Okay, Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes,
Okay,
okay. So with that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When we go to do the other revisions, are there more?
there will be more, yes.
Yeah.
Those will come on July 18th.
Okay, and perhaps we'll. So these are immaterial.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I never want to see one like this.
Okay, so on to item C, consideration and approval of memorandum of understanding with Deming Cesar Chavez Charter High School for transportation for SY 24-25. Ms. Trees?
Mr. President, members of the board, this first MOU from transportation is to establish transportation services in a demonstrated their child charter school. And so this is pretty much routine business. We do this every year. Nothing has changed within the MOU this upcoming year. I do want to report that this past year, we had a total of 57 students riding our DPS buses to Deming Cesar Chavez. 18 of them were from the port of entry and 39 were from in-town. And so unless there's any questions, I stand.
I'll move to approve the memorandum of understanding with Deming Cesar Chavez Charter High School for transportation for school year 24-25.
Motion to have a second.
I'll second.
Motion and a second.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes. And on to item D, consideration and approval of memorandum of understanding with Haynes buses and M&T buses for emergency transportation in the event of a large evacuation of students for SY 24-25. Mr. Treviso.
Mr. President, members of the board, again, this is routine business. Nothing has changed with this MOU. It's basically to establish the emergency transportation in case of an event. Basically, we would coordinate with the contractors and district personnel and law enforcement to establish loading and unloading areas for students, define routes to change in those events of emergencies. And so again, nothing different than usual, just a routine business.
Any questions? Comments?
I'll make a motion
Okay,
that we consideration a memorial. Consideration and approval of memorandum of understanding is this with Hayes buses and M&T buses for emergency transportation in the event of a large evacuation of student from SY 24-25.
motion to have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes. Two more, three more, four more.
Do you need to take a break?
Consideration and approval, item E, consideration and approval of memorandum of understanding with Haynes buses and M&T buses. DPS attrition model for SY 24-25.
Mr. President, members of the board, and this MOU is again routine business. Basically, if the board chooses, in the event of attrition, so if any of our drivers resign or retire, if the district chooses to attrition that bus to one of the contractors, it pretty much establishes fair rotation between the two contractors for those buses, basically sped buses. We've got two left in the district. And again, the biggest thing there is that the district would have that choice, the board, the school board.
Any questions? How does that happen? That we,
It happened just last year, as a matter of fact, with bus 68. We had our driver retire, and so that went to Haynes buses. And that is the sped bus in Columbus.
I'll move.
Okay.
The approval of memorandum of understanding with Hayes buses and, am I reading the right one?
Yeah.
And M&T buses DPS attrition model for SY 24-25.
yeah, second,
I'll second.
motion and a second.
And Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes. And with that, on to item G, consideration and approval of lease agreement for bus 68 for Haynes buses.
No.
F.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get through things. Trying to help you a little bit.
We do listen to you.
Consideration and approval of memorandum of understanding for air conditioner equipment maintenance and repair for buses acquired by Haynes Buses and M&T Buses for school year F 24-25. That's item F.
Okay, so again, routine business, this is pretty much the way I understand it, is to establish that agreement with the contractors. The Deming Public Schools will take over any kind of maintenance and repair costs for air conditioner equipment on our sped buses that they currently have. And so this is basically anything, any bus prior to 2021, because after 2021, they make modifications.
And how many buses do we have that are,
So currently there are 3 with Haynes and 2 with M&T.
And 2 with whom?
M&T? One with M&T.
Okay.
Questions, comments? None, I'll entertain a motion.
Entertain motion to approve the memorandum of understanding for air conditioning equipment maintenance and repair for buses acquired by Haynes Buses and M&T Buses for SY 24-25.
Okay, no, second.
1 second.
Motion in a second.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron.
Yes,
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes. Now we're on item G. Consideration and approval of lease agreement for bus 68 for Haynes Buses.
So if you'll recall, just last month, I came before you for that amendment to the lease agreement for Mr. Haynes for bus 68 that was attrition last year. And so basically, because he still does not have that school bus, moving into his own bus, moving into the new school year, he would still have to use our DPS bus 68. And so basically this establishes that agreement, the lease agreement of 10 cents per mile. He is running it for 15,859.8 miles. And so that is a total of $1,585.98 that this lease agreement we have to pay back.
Do you have to come back before us whenever that he gets his bus?
so we're approving to continue it like it is until, okay. Okay. I move approval.
Okay.
Of the lease agreement for bus 68 for Haynes Buses.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion in a second.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes,
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes. And on to H. Consideration and approval of memorandum of understanding for chartered activity trips for SY 24-25 with Haynes Buses and M&T Buses.
Mr. President, members of the board, even though this is routine business for, again, our chartered activity trips, there are changes to this one this upcoming year. The biggest change is not only the fees that we have negotiated with the contractors through the negotiation process, but if you can look down to bullet number 2, where it states that as a result of the district requirements to comply with Title IX, if a district activity bus is available, the bus contractor must use our own buses before they use theirs. And so that would be the biggest change with this, if we were to have to use them to contract out an activity trip. And then other than that would just be the rates. They were $1.80 per mile last year. We've gone up this year to $1.89 if they use our DPS buses. The driver rates went from $18 per hour last year to $19 per hour this upcoming year, if you so choose to approve. And then if we use a contractor bus, last year we were at $2.95 per mile. This year would be $3.05 per mile. And driver rates went up from $18 to $19. Again, if they use an SUV, if we don't have the need for a bus, then they can take one of our DPS SUVs. The rate would be $1.89 per mile and $19 per hour for driver.
and how many of those do you have available? Cars?
We have 6 Suburbans, 6 SUVs, and then we have 5 activity buses now because we just got them in this year.
Thank you.
So unless there's any other questions, I'll send you.
Any questions,
Mhm.
comments? No, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll recommend the memorandum of understanding for chartered activity trips for SY 24-25 with Haynes Buses Incorporated and M&T Buses.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Motion and a second.
Mrs. Crumley,
yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes,
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes. Thank you. On to consideration and approval, sorry, it's consideration and approval of quote for Renaissance products and services. Mr. Wyman?
Sir, Mr. President, members of the board, before you is a quote for Illuminate's DNA assessment platform. This is a platform we've used, I think, 7 years in the district. Currently, the district uses this platform for our common formative assessments. So in order to give our assessments throughout the year, district-wide. Additionally, this program allows our schools to create school-wide and classroom assessments aligned to the state adopted standards. Rather to wait to the end of the school year and see how our students are performing on those summative assessments, this allows us to progress monitor throughout the school year. Like I said, this has been with us, I think 6 or 7 years we've had this. And to Ms. Doyle's point earlier, this is something that is approved through a TIPS contract, which is a co-op that is available, that the district does use. So with that, I stand for any questions.
it's tips.
TIPS USA, TIPS USA. They're based out of Texas.
Out of Texas.
Yes.
That's good. I'm from there.
All right, any questions? Comments? None, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the quote for Renaissance products and services.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes,
Mr. Roscoe.
Yes. With that, on to number 7, strategic planning presentation discussion.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, we do have Mr. Gutierrez and Mr. Johnson on Zoom. And it is to go over the strategic plan and the district goals that you guys have been working with them on. And with that, I will hand it over to, looks like Ms. Johnston.
I hear you.
She's mute.
Yeah,
She's good. I think it's me, Charles. So I'll facilitate and Denise is going to record some information this evening.
welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here this evening. I'm not envious of your positions this time of year with so much to approve and discuss with budgets and RFPs that I know you all will get it figured out. And then the policies are, I'm so happy to see the changes with the policy manual because Vice President Cameron, you're right, that old policy manual had some huge mistakes and some things that didn't even make sense. And how would I administer this, So anyway, those are all good things happening for New Mexico Public Schools. President Orozco, I guess this evening we'd like to get some information from you, and then Ms. Johnston and I will reach out to Secretary Krell and Board Member Pice and get their input. I want to thank you, Vice President Cameron, and you, Board Member Crumley, for giving us your thoughts about the options that you liked for your vision, your mission, as well as your core values and your board goals. So with that said, I think we're getting some kickback from Denise's computer, who's in the other room. I'm just going to close the door to my office. And so just to be efficient on this eve of the 4th of July and your dedication to having a board meeting to make some important decisions, President Orozco, what would be your choice of your vision options for cultivating champions of change, champions of excellence in every field, or building a legacy of champions.
You know, I didn't look at that one. Let me open that one up. I had the core value statements. Give me just a sec.
Sure. And I'll share with you on this one, both Vice President Cameron and Board Member Crumley, option 3, building a legacy of champions, was their first choice.
Okay, so they both had the same choice.
Mm-hmm.
We can stay consistent with their choice, and I'll go with their choice on that one as well.
Okay. It's a nice choice. Denise and I like all of them, but it's it's a good choice. And then I thought Board Member Crumley, I just want to say, you know, I grew up in farming and ranching country in West Texas, and I thought of cultivating as growing, developing, and I thought it was so interesting when you said it sounds like a farming term.
Yeah.
That's really true. That's really true as well. And I'm like, oh, well, I understand that. So I appreciated your comment about that. So thank you.
I thought of that too, because I grew up on a farm.
Yeah. And I didn't grow up on one, but I lived around multiple farms and ranches. So
Yes.
anyway, but good. But I think the legacy piece is really nice. And then on the mission options, which, and I'll give you a minute, President Orozco, to read through these, but let's see, first choice on this one for Board Member Crumley was number 2, to challenge and support each student to achieve their personal best, et cetera, et cetera. And Vice President Cameron liked the 3rd bullet, which was to create a legacy of lifelong learners who are champions in their chosen paths. And neither of them had number 1 as a first choice. Board Member Crumley did have it as her second choice.
I'll go with the mission, the second one, to challenge and support.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Now we're on to the core values. Which was your first choice for innovation?
Let me get back there.
Bullet 1, 2, 3, or 4.
I think the 3rd one.
And then do you have a second or third choice?
Probably the 4th one is the second choice.
Okay. And then your third choice, 1 or 2?
Probably 2.
Okay. And 1 would be your fourth choice. Okay, perfect. Okay. Accountability. What would be your first choice there? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Three.
Okay. And your second choice?
4.
Okay.
And then 1. And then 1.
Okay. Perfect. Ethics. And there's just 3 choices with ethics. They were a little bit more detailed and a little longer.
2.
That's your
3.
first choice?
Yes, ma'am. 2, 3.
Okay. 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 Gotcha. And then Your, on safety, there's 4 choices. And I think this be your real area of expertise based on your past career.
Yeah, just a few days. Trying to get had a pop up there. Okay. Well, um, one
Okay,
and then 3
okay,
and then 4.
okay. And advocacy. And I can tell you that both Board Member Crumley and Vice President Cameron, the first bullet was their first choice.
I would do 3,
Okay,
1, and then 2.
okay, perfect. And then let's see. My paper out of order. Board goal 1 is to foster academic excellence and achievement. What would be your first statement? And I just want to clarify with the board goals, we gave you some examples of outcomes, but this is where we have to meet with your superintendent and her staff to figure out how will we measure this board goal and create those measurable outcomes for the board goal. So just so there's a clear understanding of that, because, with student achievement, especially, there's so many different measures in how we can look at achievement and growth and how we triangulate the data. So we just need to really be able to work with the superintendent and her staff in these areas and get their input to really refine the outcomes.
Okay.
But your job is just, this is our goal. And then it's up to the superintendent and her staff to figure out how to achieve that goal for your desired wishes. So that of those bullets, 1, 2, or 3, what would be your first choice?
I'm not seeing I don't see that attachment with the board goals.
Can you get that up? Maybe just on the screen, Charles, in the PowerPoint.
Is it within the PowerPoint?
Let me know when you're ready to move over.
They're total of 4.
Yes.
See, if you could put it on board goal 1, I think, Charles, yeah, there we go.
I would say that number 2.
Okay, and I was just getting ready to say both Vice President Cameron and Board Member Crumley, that was their choice as well. Okay. Do you have a second or a third choice, or that would be your choice?
I think that would be the choice.
Okay, thank you. I think
Yes,
Vice
ma'am.
President Cameron felt that way too. This is my choice. Okay, board goal 2. This is about optimizing financial management and district operations. I know you're very proud of your financial department, and it seems like you do a good job with your operations as well, from what Denise and I can gather on the website. But again, we just need to meet with your folks and establish those measurable outcomes. But in terms of this one, Vice President Cameron's first choice was the second bullet about sustaining excellence in financial and operational stewardship. And then board member Crumley, number 3, was her first choice about ensuring effective and efficient financial management in district operations. And doing that by employing strategic planning, transparent practices, and so on.
Yeah, and I like 1.
Okay.
Just to throw a wrench in everything, right?
That's okay, because in the end, we'll have to, on the 18th, we'll have to discuss it. And as I said, Ms. Johnston and I will get input from your other 2 board members so that we can say, okay, there's consensus on this one, but we've got to have some discussion about this, and this before you decide.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to board goal 3. Enhance health, safety, and wellness. On this particular goal, board member Crumley selected 1 and as the first bullet as her first choice, and Vice President Cameron selected 3 as her first choice.
I would say 1.
Okay. And last one is around build family and community connections. Board member Crumley selected number 2 as her first choice, and Vice President Cameron selected number 3 as her first choice.
I would say 2.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for your input. Sorry for putting you on the stand there. Get some, putting you through an inquisition to find out your responses. But
No problem.
what Miss Johnston will do before the 18th is meet with Secretary Crowell and Board Member Pice and get their input. And then we'll figure out those areas where we have consensus. And then we'll focus the discussion on the 18th around maybe some negotiation around the goals and what you can live with. And then hopefully be able to take a vote that evening. Ms. Johnston and I are scheduled to be back in your district the week of the 22nd of July. And then we'll be back August 11th through the 22nd. And we're just going to kind of live in your community for about 11, 12 days and meet with all the school staff and principals, as well as parents and some of your community organizations to get input on your board goals. And then we'll do writing as we go, because we're really committed to bringing to you a strategic plan for final approval in early September, so that your superintendent can begin to get it rolled out this year, this school.
Okay.
So do you have questions for us this evening?
Any questions by the board?
I don't.
I have just one question. Whenever you're meeting with staff and community members, is it similar to the meeting that we had, like a similar format as far as an open discussion about questions that you're going to?
We what we typically do is we'll bring this piece that the board will have finished, adopting your new vision, your mission, your core values, your board goals. And then our question for staff, for schools, or your other staff, how will we achieve this goal. So mostly for schools, it's that question, or it's a few areas. It's around, of course, academic achievement. It's around building family and community connections, safety, wellness, all those things. For your finance department, for your operations department, transportation, student nutrition, those are more prescribed for their departments and how they will achieve the goal that relates to their department. And in some instances, school districts, the departments will then build like an action plan that falls into that strategic plan for addressing their issues. Or addressing the things that they know they need to improve. Because if we talk to your department directors right now and said, what are 4 things you need to work on to improve this coming year? And you had the time to do it and it was your priority, what would it be? They could all tell you what that would be. So we'll go about it that way, but it all folds back into ensuring that they're addressing by school, by department, your board goals and how to achieve those. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
I have a question. Have you,
Yes,
so you
ma'am.
have, including tonight, there's 3 people that have, of us that have given you what our goals we think they are. Have any of the others, are we still missing?
We're still
2.
missing input from 2 of our board members.
And you will some way try to get that, or are we going on this? Because,
Yeah, she was explaining that a minute ago. She's gonna reach out to Daniel
Mhm.
and to Olivia
Yeah.
and get their take on everything and then
I guess I
compile-
was reading something.
compile everything
Yeah.
and then come back to us.
I'm sorry, I didn't,
That's
was
okay.
looking,
That's
okay.
that's okay. Yeah, yeah. No, we'll do our best to get their input. So anyway. And we'll do
Okay.
that. We'll do that within the next few days. I'm not sure when Mr. Krell gets back from vacation, but I'll reach out to board member Pice tomorrow and see if we can get a time scheduled to meet with her. And Denise and I'll do probably a Zoom with them, much like we did with you, President Orozco, and see if we can get their input so that we're efficient with that. And then we'll get it compiled, and where we have consensus, we won't have to spend a lot of time on that on the 18th. And where we don't, that's where we'll have to have some discussion and negotiation.
and I'm not sure, I think Olivia was up somewhere on a trip, so.
Okay.
Okay.
In case you don't get her.
Okay. And Charles, I'll reach out to you tomorrow. Maybe you can kind of provide me with their schedules if you know when they'll be back, and then we'll be sure and be on top of that, because we want to be well prepared on the 18th, because we really do want to begin work in your district on July 22nd.
Sounds good. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Have a happy 4th of July.
Same to you all.
Same to you.
Good night.
Good
night.
night.
With that, on to announcements. Any board member requests for agenda items?
Not that I can think of.
The next regular meeting will be held July 18th, 2024 at 5:30 PM. Meeting will be held at the Emmett Shockley Administration Building here in Deming. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
Second,
Motion in a second.
Mrs. Spillman,
yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Lisby,
Yes.